I didn't think much of the envelope at first. It was beige, thin, and tucked halfway under my windshield wiper like a parking ticket. No stump, no return address. Just my name written in careful, unfamiliar handwriting. Not messy, not rushed, almost respectful. I was already late for work, annoyed about traffic, mentally rehearsing excuses for my manager. I almost crumpled it and tossed it onto the passenger seat without opening it. Almost. Something about seeing my full name written that way made my stomach tighten. I opened it while the engine warmed up. Inside was a single sheet of paper, folded once. No greeting, no signature, just one sentence. He knows what you did, and he's finally ready to tell. I read it 3 times before my brain caught up. Who is he? What did I do? And why now? I sat there longer than I should have, gripping the steering wheel, pulse climbing for reasons I couldn't fully explain. My mind immediately jumped to worst-case scenarios, then rejected them one by one. I hadn't committed any crimes. I hadn't cheated. I hadn't stolen anything major. My life, on the surface, was painfully ordinary, but that sentence didn't feel random. It felt targeted, like someone knew exactly where to press. I folded the paper back into the envelope and drove to work, telling myself it was probably a prank. A wrong car, a bored neighbor, someone trying to be clever. That explanation held for about 20 minutes, until I noticed the second envelope. This one was waiting on my desk. Same paper, same handwriting, no stump, no return address. My chest tightened so fast it felt like someone had stepped on it. I looked around the office. Nobody was watching me. My coworkers were already buried in screens and coffee. The receptionist hadn't said anything unusual. No one had mentioned delivering mail. I opened it. This one had more words. You built your life on something that wasn't yours. He watched you do it. He waited. Now he's tired of waiting. I didn't finish reading before my hands started shaking, because now I knew this wasn't random, and whoever wrote this knew something real. I shoved the paper into my bag and spent the rest of the morning pretending to work while my thoughts ran in circles. Every email felt louder. Every footstep behind me felt closer. I kept replaying old memories, searching for the moment this could be about. And one memory kept surfacing, no matter how hard I pushed it down. 10 years ago, a different city, a different version of me. Back then, I wasn't successful. I wasn't respected. I wasn't stable. I was desperate and angry and convinced the world owed me something it hadn't delivered. I'd taken an opportunity that wasn't fully mine. At the time, I justified it. Everyone did it, I told myself. Nobody would get hurt. The person who deserved credit wouldn't even notice. Except someone had noticed. I'd buried that chapter under years of distance, promotions, and carefully curated normalcy. I convinced myself it was over. Done. Forgotten. Apparently, it wasn't. At lunch, I skipped eating and went straight to my car, locked the doors, and read the letters again. Side by side, they felt deliberate, measured. This wasn't someone lashing out. This was someone who had planned this. I checked my phone. No unknown calls. No strange messages. No emails. Just silence. That night, I didn't tell my partner. I told myself I would once I understood what was happening. Once I had control. Instead, I nodded through dinner, laughed at the right moments, and lay awake staring at the ceiling while my brain replayed every mistake I'd ever made. The third envelope arrived the next morning. This one was at home. Slipped through the mail slot sometime overnight. My partner was still asleep when I found it. I stood in the hallway holding it, listening to the hum of the refrigerator, the normal sounds of a life that suddenly felt fragile. I opened it slowly. He didn't lose because he wasn't good enough. He lost because you were willing to take what wasn't offered. And the worst part is, you never looked back. My legs gave out. I sat on the floor, back against the wall, breathing shallowly like I'd run a mile. My hands were cold. My mouth tasted metallic. They knew. Whoever he was, they knew exactly what had happened. Not just the result, but the intent. The rationalizations. The way I'd walked away and never checked on the damage. I hadn't just benefited. I'd erased someone. That day, my partner asked if I was sick. I said yes. It wasn't a lie. I called in sick to work and spent the day searching old emails, old files, old accounts. I didn't even know what I was looking for. Proof? Leverage? A way to undo something that had already happened? By evening, I found something I hadn't expected. An old message thread I'd archived and forgotten about. From him. Short. Professional. Polite. He'd asked a question. Clarified a detail. Trusted me. And I'd used that trust. I sat there reading the thread over and over, seeing it now through a lens I'd avoided for years. He hadn't been stupid. He hadn't been careless. He'd been decent. That night, my partner finally pressed harder. "You've been off for days," they said. "What's going on?" I almost told them. The word sat right there, heavy and ready. But fear won. If I say out loud, I thought, it becomes real. So I said, work stress. They didn't look convinced, but they let it go. The fourth envelope arrived 2 days later. This one wasn't an envelope. It was a photo, printed, glossy, left on my car seat. It showed two men standing outside an old building I recognized immediately. One of them was me, younger, thinner, smiling in a way that made my stomach turn. The other was him, the man I'd built my life on top of. On the back of the photo, written neatly, were 4 words. "You remember this day." I did. That was the day everything changed. The day I'd crossed a line I'd told myself I'd never cross. The day I'd watched his future quietly fold while mine expanded. I didn't go to work after that. I drove aimlessly for over an hour, heart pounding, convinced every car behind me was following. My phone buzzed twice while I was driving. I didn't check it until I stopped. Unknown number. Just one message. Tomorrow. No explanation. No threat. Just certainty. That night, I told my partner everything. Not the cleaned up version. Not the version I'd practiced in my head over the years. The ugly one. The selfish one. The one where I benefited and walked away. They didn't interrupt. They didn't yell. When I finished, they asked one question. "Is he dangerous?" I thought about that. "No," I said finally. "He's patient." We barely slept. The next day, I took the morning off and sat in our living room waiting for something I couldn't define. I didn't know if someone would knock on the door, call my phone, or drop another envelope. At noon, my phone rang. Unknown number. I answered. "Do you know why I waited?" A man asked calmly. I knew that voice immediately, even though it had been a decade. "No," I said, "because I wanted to see what kind of person you became." My throat closed, and I asked. There was a pause. Not dramatic. Thoughtful. "That's what we're going to talk about," he said. He told me where to meet him. I went, and as I drove there, one thought repeated in my head louder than the rest. This wasn't revenge. This was reckoning. He was already there when I arrived, sitting at a corner table like he belonged there, like the last 10 years hadn't passed at all. Same posture, same habit of folding his hands together when he waited. Only his hair had changed, streaked with gray that made him look calmer. Grounded, that somehow made everything worse. I stood there longer than I should have, heart pounding so hard I could feel it in my throat. Every instinct screamed at me to turn around, to leave, to keep running the way I always had. But my feet moved anyway. He looked up and met my eyes. "No anger, no satisfaction, just recognition." "You came," he said. I said I would. I replied, though my voice sounded foreign to my own ears. He gestured to the chair across from him. He said, for a few seconds, neither of us spoke. The cafe noise filled the space between us, cups clinking, quiet conversations, a barista calling out names. Ordinary life continuing while mine felt like it was collapsing inward. "I won't waste your time," he finally said. "I didn't do all this to scare you." I let out a shaky breath. "Then why?" He studied me carefully, like he was taking inventory. "Because for years," he said, "I told myself what happened didn't matter. That I lost fair and square. That if I'd been smarter, faster, more ruthless, I wouldn't be sitting in my parents' house at 35 wondering where everything went wrong." My stomach twisted, And then I asked, and then I stopped lying to myself. He leaned back slightly, eyes never leaving mine. You didn't beat me, he said calmly. You erased me. The words hit harder than any accusation. I opened my mouth to argue, to explain, to soften it the way I always had in my head. But nothing came out, because he was right. You took something I trusted you with, he continued, and you turned it into a life. Promotions, stability, respect, all the things I told myself I didn't need while I watched everyone move on without me. I swallowed. I didn't mean for it to. I know, he interrupted gently. That's the part that took me the longest to accept. He looked down at his coffee, then back up. You didn't wake up that morning thinking you'd ruin someone. You just wanted to win. And you were willing to let me disappear if it meant you didn't have to slow down. Silence settled again. I felt exposed in a way I'd never felt before. Not attacked. Seen. So why now? I asked quietly. He smiled, but there was no humor in it. Because I finally built something again, he said. Not what we dreamed of back then. Smaller. Slower. But it's mine. My chest tightened. And I said, and I realized something, he continued. I didn't want revenge. I wanted acknowledgement. He leaned forward. I wanted you to feel it, he said. The weight of knowing your success wasn't clean. The discomfort of realizing someone remembered. I nodded slowly. You succeeded. I know. Another pause. I'm not here to destroy your life, he said. I could have if I wanted to. You know that. I did. The proof was already in my hands. So what do you want? I asked. He didn't answer immediately. Instead, he pulled out a folder and slid it across the table toward me. Read, he said. My hands trembled as I opened it. Inside were documents, timelines, comparisons, proof of what I'd taken, how it had been used, how it had grown, side by side with what his life had looked like afterward. Not exaggerated, not dramatized, just facts. This, he said, tapping the folder, is what I carried alone for years. I looked up at him, eyes burning. I'm sorry, I said, finally saying the words I'd avoided for a decade. I know that doesn't fix anything. He nodded. No, it doesn't. He stood up, gathering his things. But here's what does matter, he said. What you do now that you know you weren't invisible. My heart started racing again. What do you mean? I'm not asking you to confess publicly, he said. I'm not asking for money. I'm not asking for your job. I stared at him, confused. I'm asking you to stop pretending the story starts with you, he said. Because there are people under you right now who trust you the same way I trusted you. The implication hit hard. Don't make them disappear, he said quietly. He paused, then added, and don't tell yourself you're a good person just because no one called you out. With that, he walked away. Just like that. No threats, no demands, no dramatic ending. I sat there long after he left, staring at the folder, feeling something shift inside me that I couldn't undo. When I got home, my partner was waiting. Well, they asked. He didn't want revenge, I said. What did he want? For me to remember, I replied. That night, I didn't sleep. I thought about every decision I'd made since that day. Every shortcut, every moment I'd benefited from silence. Every time someone else's voice had gone quiet so mine could get louder. Over the next few weeks, things changed. Not publicly, not dramatically, but I changed how I worked, how I credited people, how I spoke in meetings, how I listened when someone hesitated. And one day, quietly, I reached out to him, not to apologize again, but to ask how I could help someone else avoid the same fate. He replied with a single sentence. That's enough. We don't talk often now. Sometimes not at all for months. But the envelope stopped. The silence feels different now. He didn't ruin my life. He gave it weight. And that might be harder to carry. If you were in my place, would you have faced him or kept running? Tell me what you think in the comments. And if you want more real stories like this, subscribe and stay with me. I didn't realize my life was already falling apart when I signed the papers. At that point, I still believed I was in control. I believed the sacrifices were temporary. I believed the quiet dread in my chest was just stress not instinct screaming at me to stop. The truth didn't hit until months later, when a stranger looked me dead in the eyes and said a sentence I still hear in my sleep. You know they chose you because you'd never say no. I laughed back then. I'm not laughing now. 5 years earlier, I was invisible in the best way. No enemies, no drama, no power either. I worked hard, stayed late, fixed problems before they became disasters. The kind of employee managers praised privately and ignored publicly. That was fine with me. I had a life outside work. Friends. A partner who believed in me more than I believed in myself. Plans that felt real. Then the restructure happened. Half the floor was wiped out in a single meeting. People crying. Security escorting employees who had built the company from scratch. I watched names disappear from Slack channels like they'd never existed. That's when my boss called me into his office. He didn't offer condolences. He didn't explain the layoffs. He smiled. "We need someone reliable," he said. "Someone steady." He slid a folder across the desk. "A promotion. A raise. A role no one else wanted." I hesitated. The responsibilities were vague. The authority was broad. The accountability was absolute. "I'll think about it," I said. He nodded like he already knew the answer. That night, I talked it over with my partner. They were proud of me, told me this was my moment, that people like me don't get opportunities twice. So I said yes. That was the first mistake. The job wasn't what it looked like. Officially, I was a process manager. Unofficially, I was a buffer, a human shield between leadership decisions and the people affected by them. Every time something went wrong, it was routed through me. Every angry call, every denial, every conversation where someone's future quietly collapsed. At first, I told myself I was helping, that if I didn't do it, someone colder would. Then I noticed patterns. Budgets approved verbally but denied in writing. Performance issues documented after people complained, never before. Projects reassigned without explanation. And every time someone pushed back, my boss would sigh and say, "Handle it." So I did. I learned the language, the tone, the careful phrasing that made bad news sound procedural. I learned how to end conversations before they became confrontations. People stopped arguing with me. That scared me more than anything. The first time I realized something was wrong, it involved a woman named Carla. She'd been there longer than anyone on my team. Smart, blunt, respected. She came to me with proof that numbers were being altered before reviews. I believed her immediately. When I brought it up to leadership, they didn't deny it. They asked me to delay. "Let's not overreact," they said. "These things take time." Then Carla was written up, then reassigned, then gone. I told myself it wasn't my fault. I told myself I hadn't caused it, but I hadn't stopped it either. The promotion kept coming. More money, more trust, more silence. My partner noticed first. "You're different," they said one night. "You don't talk anymore." I brushed it off. Work was demanding, stressful, temporary, but it wasn't temporary. I stopped sleeping, stopped feeling, stopped reacting when people around me lost jobs, credibility, futures. I was efficient. That's what scared me most. Then came the audit, a quiet internal review that leadership insisted was routine. I was asked to assist, to gather documents, to explain workflows. As I dug deeper, I realized what had actually been happening. Funds shifted between departments to hide losses. Failures blamed on people who'd already left. Complaints buried under process jargon. And my name was everywhere, not as the architect, as the executor. Every decision flowed through me. Every denial bore my signature. I confronted my boss. He didn't panic. He laughed. "You think you're the only one who knows?" he asked. "You think they don't see you as part of this?" I felt something cold spread through my chest. "They need someone," he continued, calm as ever. "Someone clean enough to blame. Someone loyal enough not to flip." That's when I understood. I wasn't promoted because I was reliable. I was promoted because I was expendable. The audit results never came out. Instead, I was offered another role. Different department. Same company. Higher pay. A reward. Or a leash. That's when a stranger appeared. I was leaving late, head down, replaying the same arguments in my mind when someone said my name. I turned. He looked ordinary. Mid-30s. Tired eyes. Familiar face I couldn't place. "You don't remember me," he said. "That makes sense." My stomach dropped. "You approved my termination," he continued. 3 years ago. Performance-based. That was the phrase. I opened my mouth to speak, but nothing came out. "I'm not here to yell," he said. "I already did that. Alone. For months." I swallowed. "I am sorry." He nodded. "I know. That's the problem." He stepped closer. "They didn't choose you because you were smart," he said quietly. "They chose you because you'd carry it." Then he walked away. That sentence cracked something open inside me. I started seeing everything differently. The smiles, the praise, the way leadership never put anything incriminating in writing. And then I found the file, buried deep in a shared drive. Old versions of reports, original numbers, names removed, evidence, enough to burn the whole structure down, but also enough to destroy me. I sat there staring at my screen for hours, realizing the truth. If I spoke up, I'd lose everything. If I stayed silent, I'd become the villain in stories I'd never hear. That night, my partner asked me a question I couldn't answer. "Are you proud of what you do?" I didn't respond, because for the first time, I wasn't sure who I'd become. And somewhere deep down, I knew the choice I made next would decide whether I could live with myself at all. I didn't sleep that night. I kept seeing that stranger's face, hearing his voice echo inside my skull. They didn't choose you because you were smart. They chose you because you'd carry it. It wasn't anger. It was exhaustion. Like every single thing I believed about loyalty, success, and hard work had quietly rotted underneath me, and I was just now smelling it for the first time. By morning, I knew two things for sure. I couldn't keep doing this, and I couldn't just walk away without consequences. Because if I vanished, someone else would replace me tomorrow. Someone even hungrier, even quieter. I didn't want revenge. I wanted accountability. So I did what I'd been too scared to do before. I copied everything, not onto a USB drive. That was too easy to trace. I printed documents in small batches. I forwarded internal reports to a burner email. I took pictures of redacted pages with my old phone camera, the one I never logged into the company Wi-Fi with. Every click, every download, every whisper of the printer felt like thunder in that sterile gray office. I expected someone to burst through the door any minute, accusing me of betrayal. But no one noticed, because no one ever really looked at me unless they needed something done. Weeks passed. I waited for the right moment. The annual shareholder meeting where every executive would be on stage pretending transparency and ethics still meant something. I had a plan: leak everything anonymously right before the event started. Emails, reports, voice recordings. Enough to prove who had actually orchestrated the manipulation. But paranoia eats you alive slowly. I started double-checking shadows. I stopped using my phone at home. My partner noticed I wasn't eating. They asked what was wrong. "Elite. Work stress," I said again. But one night, I came home and saw them sitting at the table, holding the burner phone. "Who's this for?" they asked quietly. I froze. That's when I realized how deep I was in. I tried to explain how everything was rigged, how people were being ruined just to make the numbers look good, how I was part of it without wanting to be. They listened, silent, expression unreadable. When I finished, they said something that shook me worse than the stranger's words. "I get it," they whispered, "but you still did it." And they were right. The morning of the meeting, my stomach was on fire. I'd already sent the files to 3 journalists and 1 government investigator, all anonymous, all scheduled to drop exactly 15 minutes before the meeting started. Then the company's security team arrived at my desk. "Can you come with us?" Polite, smiling, but I knew someone had found something. They escorted me into a windowless room. My boss was already there, perfectly calm, perfectly rehearsed. He gestured to a folder on the table. Inside were printed screenshots of the burner emails. My throat closed up. I couldn't breathe. He leaned forward. "Do you think we didn't know?" he asked. "You've been predictable since day one." He tapped the papers. "We'll let you dig. We'll let you send them. Because when it all blows up, the first person they'll blame is the one who signed everything." He smiled. "Congratulations. You just became our fall guy." It should have ended there. It almost did. But life is strange. Because while I sat there, stunned, the alerts started going off on his phone. Then mine. Then the whole building's. Every screen. Even the presentation in the auditorium downstairs suddenly flashed with leaked documents. All of them. Not just mine. All of them. Someone else had the files too. My boss's face went white. He shouted for IT, for security, for anyone. But it was too late. The journalists were already tweeting. The investigation had already gone public. And my name? It wasn't in the headlines. Because I'd sent my files from inside the company's own intranet. But someone else had been watching longer. Someone inside, even higher up. I was both exposed and protected at the same time. By evening, the office was chaos. Executives vanished mid-meeting. Emails stopped working. People whispered names, accusations, betrayals. And I walked out. No one stopped me. Outside, the air felt heavier, like the city itself knew what had happened inside that glass tower. I stood there, watching the sunset hit the mirrored walls, and realized something I never thought I'd feel again. Relief. Not because I'd won. There were no winners. But because I wasn't part of it anymore. For the first time in years, I felt like myself again. Scared, uncertain, human. The next week, I met the stranger again. He found me somehow. "I saw what happened," he said. "Did you leak it?" I hesitated. "Not exactly," I said. "I started it. Someone else finished it." He smiled. "That's how it always goes. One person lights the match. Another makes sure the fire spreads." He turned to leave, then looked back. "You carried it long enough," he said. "Now, let it burn." It's been a year since then. The company rebranded, relocated, replaced its top floor. The news cycle moved on, but people still send me anonymous thank you messages sometimes. I never respond. I don't want credit. I just want peace. Sometimes when I walk past office buildings at night, the kind where people stay late thinking they're building their future, I feel that same quiet dread I used to ignore. I hope they never hear that sentence I did. But if they do, I hope they listen sooner. Because the truth is, they don't choose you because you're smart. They choose you because you'll carry it. And I won't, ever again. If this story gave you chills or made you think twice about loyalty and power, hit subscribe, drop a comment, and like the video to help more people find it. Your support means everything and keeps these stories coming every single day. The voicemail came in at 2:17 a.m. and I knew before I even pressed play that it wasn't meant for me. I was half asleep, phone buzzing on a nightstand, that low vibration that only happens when someone calls and hangs up too fast. No missed call, just a voicemail. No name, no number saved. I almost ignored it, but something about the timing, about the quiet in the apartment, made me reach for the phone anyway. The first 10 seconds were just breathing. Slow, controlled, like someone steadying themselves before saying something they've been holding in for years. Then a woman's voice said my name. Not the full version, the short one, the one only a few people ever used. And then she said, "If you're hearing this, it means I didn't stop them." I sat up. Suddenly I was wide awake. She kept talking, voice shaking now, words tripping over each other like she was trying to outrun something chasing her. I don't know who else to send this to. I don't know who to trust. But you deserve to know what you're actually part of. The message cut off mid-sentence. That was it. No explanation. No callback number. No context. Just my name and the kind of sentence that doesn't let you go back to sleep. By morning, I convinced myself it was a mistake. Wrong number. Drunk voicemail. Some kind of elaborate scam. Except I couldn't shake the feeling that it wasn't. I replayed it again in the shower. Then again in the car. Then again at my desk, with my headphones in, pretending to listen to music while my heart hammered against my ribs. I recognized the voice. It took me hours to admit that to myself. It belonged to someone I hadn't spoken to in almost 5 years. Someone who had vanished from my life so quietly I'd almost convinced myself she'd never really been part of it at all. Maya. She used to work 2 desks down from me. Same department, same late nights, same shared jokes about the broken coffee machine and the way our manager always smiled when he was lying. Then one day, she just stopped coming in. No goodbye, no resignation email, no explanation. HR said she'd moved on. Everyone else moved on too, except apparently she hadn't. I tried calling the number back, straight to voicemail. A generic robotic voice telling me the number was no longer in service. That should have been the end of it. Instead, it felt like the beginning of something I didn't remember agreeing to. I started noticing things at work I'd never questioned before. The way certain projects disappeared after being completed. The way reports were rewritten after hours, with names quietly removed. The way people who asked too many questions didn't get fired, they got transferred, reassigned, isolated. I'd always chalked it up to corporate nonsense. Office politics, the usual mess. But now every small thing fell heavier, like it mattered in a way it hadn't before. Like I was standing in a room I'd been in for years and only just noticed a locked door behind me. 3 days later, I got another voicemail. This one was shorter. She figured out faster than we thought. A man's voice said, "Not talking to me, talking to someone else." She didn't mean to, he continued. But once she asked the question, there was no going back. A pause, then quieter. "We can't let that happen again." Click. My hand was shaking so badly, I had to put the phone down. I checked the sender. Same number. Still disconnected. I didn't tell anyone. Not my friends. Not my partner. Not even myself, really. I went through the motions. Work. Dinner. Sleep. Repeat. But at night, when everything slowed down, my brain filled in the blanks I didn't want to see. What question had Maya asked? What had she figured out? And why did it sound like I was next? I started digging. Not dramatically. Not like in movies. Quietly. I stayed late. Looked at archived files. Compared old reports to new ones. Checked metadata timestamps that no one bothered to scrub because no one thought anyone would look. Patterns emerged. Certain clients flagged as high risk never actually left. They just got renamed, restructured, folded into subsidiaries that technically didn't exist on paper. Money moved in circles, clean on the surface, rotten underneath. And then I found Maya's name. Not in HR, not in emails. In a legal document buried 6 folders deep, attached to a compliance review that had never been finalized. Her signature was there, not as an employee, as a witness. My chest tightened. Witness to what? I scrolled, and there it was. A disclosure draft. Never submitted. Never filed. She tried to report internal manipulation. Fraud masked as optimization. Numbers shifted to trigger bonuses. Stock jumps. Layoffs that conveniently removed anyone who noticed inconsistencies. She hadn't accused anyone directly. She'd asked for an internal audit. That was the question, and that was the mistake. The last file timestamp was from the night before she disappeared. I sat there staring at the screen, the office empty, lights humming softly above me, realizing how naive I'd been. She hadn't moved on. She'd been erased. That night, my partner noticed something was wrong. "You've been somewhere else all week," they said, sitting beside me on the couch. Did something happen at work? I opened my mouth to lie, and then I closed it again, because suddenly I wasn't sure who was safe to talk to. "I'm just tired," I said instead. They didn't push. That somehow made it worse. The third voicemail came exactly 1 week after the first. Maya's voice again, weaker this time. "I don't know how long I can keep doing this," she whispered. "They're watching everything. If you're listening, that means you already see it too." A shaky breath. "They don't need to hurt you. They just need you to stay quiet." Another pause. "Please don't stay quiet." The message ended. I stared at the wall long after the screen went dark, because in that moment, I understood the real danger. It wasn't that they were threatening me. It was that they didn't need to. I went to work the next day and looked around the office with new eyes. Every smile felt rehearsed. Every joke felt measured. Every conversation stopped half a second too fast when someone else walked by. At lunch, my manager sat across from me, casual, friendly, asking about my weekend. Then, like it meant nothing at all, he said, "You know, loyalty goes a long way here. We take care of our own." I nodded, smiled. A chill ran down my spine. That evening, I found an envelope taped to my apartment door. No name, no return address. Inside was a single printed screenshot, an internal email thread. My name highlighted. Subject line, potential exposure risk. Dated 2 hours earlier. I sat down on the floor, back against the door, heart pounding, realizing I was standing exactly where Maya had stood years ago, at the edge of knowing too much. And the scariest part wasn't fear. It was clarity, because once you see it, you can't unsee it. I didn't go back to sleep that night. I sat on the floor with the envelope still open beside me, rereading that screenshot until the words blurred. Potential exposure risk. It sounded so clean, so harmless, like I was a loose wire they just needed to tape down. By morning, I had made a decision that scared me more than anything else I'd felt so far. I wasn't going to disappear quietly. At work, nothing changed on the surface. People laughed in meetings. Deadlines were discussed. Someone brought donuts. My manager asked if I'd seen the latest projections, his tone easy, friendly, like he hadn't just been part of a conversation about me behind closed doors. I played along, but while everyone else talked, I listened. I watched who avoided eye contact when certain topics came up. I noticed who left meetings early and who stayed behind. I started keeping track of names, dates, tiny inconsistencies that didn't mean anything on their own, but lined up too well to be coincidence. At lunch, I didn't eat. I sat in my car and made copies. Files I wasn't supposed to have access to. Old versions of reports before they'd been cleaned. Audit requests that had been quietly withdrawn. Legal language that danced around responsibility without ever touching it. I backed everything up, twice, on devices that weren't connected to my work accounts. And then I did something I'd been afraid to even consider. I replied to the voicemail. I didn't call. I didn't text. I sent an email to the only address I could think of. The compliance inbox. Short, careful, neutral. I believe I have information related to an unresolved internal concern raised several years ago. I am requesting guidance on how to proceed safely. I didn't mention Maya's name. I didn't mention my own fear. I pressed send and felt my stomach drop. The response came faster than I expected. Not from compliance. From HR. They asked me to come in for a wellness check. That was the moment I knew. This wasn't about fixing anything. It was about controlling damage. The HR office smelled like lemon cleaner and fake calm. The woman across from me smiled too much. She asked if I was feeling overwhelmed, if work stress had been affecting my sleep, if I'd been having trouble focusing. I answered honestly without saying anything real. She nodded, typing notes I wasn't allowed to see. Then she said, "We want you to know this is a safe space." I almost laughed. When I left, my badge didn't work on the elevator. Security had to let me down. By the time I reached my car, my access to internal systems was gone. They hadn't fired me. They'd isolated me. That night, the voicemail came again. This time, there was no breathing. No hosetashchen. "They're closing in," Maya said. "If you're still there, you need to decide who you're going to be." Her voice cracked. I stayed quiet too long. The line went dead. I didn't tell my partner everything, but I told them enough. Enough that they looked at me differently. Not scared, not angry, just aware. "If this is real," they said slowly, "you can't fight it alone." "I know," I said. And for the first time since this started, I meant it. I reached out to someone I hadn't spoken to in years. A journalist. We'd gone to school together. Lost touch. Reconnected once over coffee and nostalgia. I'd always remember how she listened. How she asked questions that cut through noise. I didn't explain everything. I asked if she still believed in protecting sources. Her reply was immediate. Yes. We met in a crowded cafe across town. I slid my phone across the table and let her listen to the voicemails. I showed her the documents. I watched her expression shift from curiosity to concern to something sharper. "This isn't small," she said quietly. "I know." She leaned back. "If we do this, there's no undoing it." I thought of Maya's voice, the fear, the exhaustion. "I know," I said again. The article didn't drop right away. Weeks passed. My job officially restructured my role out of existence. Severance was offered with paperwork that felt heavier than it looked. I signed nothing. Then my landlord got a call. My bank flagged unusual activity. My partner's workplace asked strange questions. Pressure, subtle, strategic. They weren't trying to destroy me. They were trying to exhaust me. The article went live on a Tuesday morning. No names at first, just patterns, evidence, a timeline that couldn't be brushed off as coincidence. By noon, it was everywhere. By evening, names started appearing. Executives resigned. Statements were issued. Lawyers appeared on TV saying nothing that sounded like something. And then, quietly, another article followed. This one mentioned a former employee, a whistleblower. Her name was Maya, alive, in protective custody. I listened to her voicemail one last time that night. The first one, the one that started all of this. If you're hearing this, it means I didn't stop them. She hadn't. She just needed someone else to finish it. Months later, my life looked different. Not better, not worse, just honest. I had a new job, a smaller apartment, fewer illusions. One evening, a message came through my phone. Unknown number. "Thank you for not staying quiet." I didn't reply. I didn't need to. Sometimes I wonder how many people hear a voice like that and choose comfort instead of truth. Sometimes I wonder what I would have done if that voicemail had come an hour later, or earlier, or not at all. And sometimes I think about you, listening to this right now, deciding what you would have done in my place. Would you have stayed quiet, or would you have pushed back, knowing the cost? If this story made you feel something, I'd really like to know what side you think you'd land on and why. And if stories like this make you stop, think, and see things a little differently, sticking around here means you won't miss the next one. Because some stories aren't meant to be forgotten.